You are not going to get that man. You are not going to get that bank account, and you are not going to get that body if you do not become the kind of person that those things are just a byproduct of the habits that you already do and the person that you already are. And to do that, you are going to have to change your identity. Your identity, the person who you truly are, is shown through the things that you do, the things that you do without thinking, the habits that you have. The essentially the person who you are is shown through your everyday actions. So I want to explain to you really the most simplistic idea and a simplistic way to change your identity. And as always, thank you guys so much. Welcome or welcome back to the Simple Complex, where we break down simplistically ideas that may seem complicated and just make them digestible. So, how to essentially change your identity can be explained easily by just saying you have to change your truth. Once something becomes true to you, you can never look at it as being not true again. It's just that's going to be your new identity. That's just the way you see the world. The great example of this, because I know that kind of doesn't really make sense, is I want you to think about what the 20s, like what someone's 20s would look like 10 to 15 years ago. I am 24 years old. I was a teenager between the ages of 2013 to 2019. And when I tell y'all, I thought my 20s were going to be completely different. I grew up in the YOLO era. I grew up in the like Tumblr, the wild west of what they call Instagram, when people just used to post like just the most random dumps. And like, it wasn't a thing of being cute. It wasn't a thing of having aesthetic. It was a thing of just putting yourself out there, whatever that may look like for you. Now there's this thing of like editing your pictures, and even when they do like the photo dumps, it's very aesthetic-y, it's very cute. You have to make sure the color ways go together. Like people literally have color coordinated Instagram pages. Like every single picture they post, if you look at like it from a grid, all of the pictures look like they're essentially color coordinated. Nothing is wrong with that. I just want to say that disclaimer if you're someone that does that. But essentially, everything is so proper, right? 15 to 20 years ago, it was like Cokes and it was Pepsi's. Like the Hulk was a drink. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Hulk drink is, like that green alcoholic drink. Nowadays, girls are talking about drinking espresso martinis. 15 years ago, girls were talking about doing like the face mask, like the peel off face mask and just starting their day. Nowadays, girls have 10 step, self care facial routines. Essentially, the idea of what your 20s are, the identity of your 20s has changed so much. And I'm not going to lie, part of me feels like I was robbed of essentially what I thought my 20s were going to be. I thought it was going to be fun. I thought I was going to be eating fast food. I thought I was going to be drinking soda. Y'all, I stay away from soda as much as possible. The closest thing I get to soda is like an Olipop or a Poppy, and that's a probiotic drink. I eat fast food maybe 2 times a year. I stay away from that. I even stay away from fried food. Like we use air fryers now. We don't even put our food in grease anymore. I thought my 20s were gonna be all about grease. I thought my 20s were gonna be all about bottom shelf liquor and not caring. Y'all, when I go out now, I stay away from bottom shelf liquor. Why? Because I don't want a bad hangover. I thought that's what your 20s were supposed to be about, bad hangovers. Nonetheless, we've literally changed the identity of what the 20s were. How did that happen? Through truth. Because you got to think about it. Before, when people in their 20s, they're drinking soda, they're not caring. The idea behind it was this is what you do in your 20s. You're carefree. It didn't really seem like it was a problem, right? Because they're like, we're young. This is what you're supposed to do when you're young. But now we have information coming out saying, oh, this is the effects of soda, and this is what it can do to your teeth, and this is what it can do to your body. So this is why you should drink a probiotic, something that's better for your gut. If you have gut health, you're probably going to have better, skincare. If you have better gut health, you're going to have less brain fog. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, I have a self growth channel. Obviously, I have a self growth podcast, and I'm all for it. But I feel like I know way too much information. Like now, when I think of going to fast food restaurants, I really avoid them as much as I can because I think about so many documentaries and so much information that I know about fast food. I think about how they came out a couple years ago and they said they found no tuna inside of the tuna at Subway. They did not know that 15 years ago. Nonetheless, now we have so much information. We have a new truth. So that's created a new identity. And now everyone in their 20s is on the self growth journey and becoming the best selves. If you would have said that to somebody in their 20s 15 to 20 years ago, they would have said, why? Why are you caring about that in your 20s? Shouldn't you be caring about that in like your 40s? Some might even say their 50s, because the idea of what their truth was is this is us having fun. And a lot of times, too, not even a lot of times, most of the times, they did not know how detrimental these things were. Like now they're coming out with case studies and saying how, not doing certain things for even a certain amount of years, or just putting bad things in your body for a certain amount of years, how that can affect you as time goes on. They did not know those things. And I think it kind of gives like a ignorance is bliss, because they were ignorant to, and now when I say ignorant, I don't mean it in a rude way. It's just they had the lack of knowledge about knowing the effects of some of these things. It allowed them just to do them and not feel bad. It's kind of like a kid, right? A kid, if you had let them on Halloween eat all of their candy, they will, because they do not understand the effects of having rotten teeth. They don't understand the effects of having cavities, and like that's just not a truth for them. And that's another great example too. Like, why do adults, probably for the most part, I mean, of course, everybody has their nights, but for the most part, an adult is not going to stay up and eat all of this candy all night, because they're like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow with a tummy ache. They essentially, they know the truth about that thing, so that's changed their identity. And I realized that about myself. Like, when I first started, I would say my self growth journey, I would say I've always kind of been like this, if you want me to be completely honest with you. But like when I really started getting into like the journaling and the reading of the self growth books and all those other things, those have happened recently in the past 2 years. Like this is not something that I grew up doing. This is not something that I was like, oh, I always want to do this. This was something that I kind of just stumbled upon, learning more information and just going down rabbit holes of just learning a whole bunch of stuff. Like that's really just what it was for me. But essentially, I could not change until I changed my truth around something. And I think a lot of times, too, people say things like, I want to develop healthy habits and I want to have new habits. But it's kind of hard when that thing isn't true for you. Like, it's just something that you want to do. And it seems really nice. And it seems so idealistic of like, oh my gosh, I have this perfect job. And oh my gosh, I eat healthy every single day. And I do this and I do that. But I think sometimes, too, you have to ingest enough information about the bad as well. I think we often want to hear the good things, like the good things about eating healthy and the good things about making more money and the good things. And I think subconsciously, whether we realize it or not, we shy away from the bad things. Like, it's so crazy. And I hate that I'm thinking about this in my 20s. I'm only 24. Like, I always remind myself that I'm supposed to be having all this fun, but I think about too much stuff because now I know too much stuff. Essentially, I find it crazy how a lot of people my age don't really have like a hypothetical of how much money they're going to be making in the next 3 years. I think something like that is very important, because it's so easy for people to say, I want to start this business, but I keep quitting. I want to make more money. I want to invest in the stock market, but I keep quitting. But if you really sit down with yourself and you do a guesstimation of how much money working at the job that you work now you will be making in the next 3 years, then let's just do a random guesstimation of how much rent is going to be, because rent keeps going up every single month. Do you know what cities you want to live in? Do you want to live in the same city you live in now? Do you possibly want to move out of your parents' house? Like, nonetheless, I think people don't look at those things enough for it to be a truth for them. Because the truth is right now that you want to make more money. But it's not really like it's a want. I think for too many people, it's a want. And I feel like even going back to the analogy of like the 20s being different, it became a need. Like people were like, I need to eat differently so I can have more energy. I need to, drink differently so I don't have pimples. I need to do something differently. And I feel like if you keep looking at all the things that you want in life, everybody wants something. I say it all the time in my videos, but there's no difference between the goals of someone who's living on the street and the goals of someone who's living inside of $1 million penthouse. Like, I think we assume that, oh my gosh, they must have different goals and they must not. I promise you, if you talk to some people who possibly don't have as much than you or less than or all these other things, you maybe you won't. I don't mean to say this in a disrespectful way, but I think sometimes too, when that's not your reality, you look at these people like, oh yeah, they don't have no goals for themselves and they don't want to do nothing with their life. And you talk to some of these people and they will tell you some of the most outlandish slash realistic goals. Like they will say goals that are very similar to you or people that you know. And it's kind of like, but how did you end up on the street though? But how did you? Because of their identity. I told you your identity is shown through your actions. So essentially, they want to do the same things that you want to do. They just haven't found the need to do them yet. And I know it's so easy to be like, the need, they're living on the street, the need, they're listen, you would be surprised what some people go through in the identity that their truth, what they think their truth is. Like some people, they want to do more, but their truth is that they can't. Maybe it's because of their childhood, maybe it's because something they went through, and they feel like their identity is to be a broken person. They feel like their identity is to always struggle. Their identity is just to be the kind of person that this thing happens to. And I think you also have to worry about like getting out of the loop of that, just becoming the kind of person that like, and this is something that I struggle with, being someone that's very independent, being someone that's very like, oh, I got my own. I've gotten into a struggling loop. Yeah, yeah. And I possibly will create an entire episode of this because I think this is something that a lot of people go through. But I got into a loop of wanting to feel like I was working really hard or wanting to feel like I had just a bit of struggle inside of me to justify who I am. I felt like, and I didn't even realize this about myself until I read the book. Actually posted it on my most recent YouTube video, just one of the chapters, but or breaking down one of the chapters, but the book Psycho Cybernetics by something Maltz. I'm so sorry. I think it's Matthew Maltz. I know his last name is Maltz, Maltz. Nonetheless, I realized I got into a what was I saying? Oh yeah, I realized I got into a struggling loop because there was this thing that struggling gave me a certain amount of justification, like a certain amount of justification of like, see, you working hard and things don't come easy to you and you have to work hard. And I realized I subconsciously felt like I didn't deserve to have things come easy to me. I did not deserve to not worry. And so I allowed myself, no matter how much money I was making, no matter what I was doing in life, no matter how much my rent was, I would constantly have a struggle. And an example he said inside of the book was this guy who was, and this was like so crazy. This was like in the 60s. There was this guy who was a salesman. Mind you, back in the day, they had door to door salesmen. No matter what kind of neighborhood they put him in, a low class neighborhood, a middle class neighborhood, a high class neighborhood, whatever, he would only make, let's say, like $500 a week no matter what neighborhood he was in. But that doesn't make any sense, right? You would think it would adjust based upon the neighborhood. No, because he got the identity of being a $500 week kind of guy. So when he was in neighborhoods where people didn't really make that much money, he probably worked a little bit harder. When he went into neighborhoods where people were making more money, he probably put the gas on a little bit, like you know, I mean, the brake on a little bit, and he went a little bit lighter because in his mind, his identity was to be a $500 a week salesman. And it's so crazy hearing that, but it's like a lot of us develop those identities and it's simply based upon our truths. And we feel like we have to struggle or we feel like we have to go through certain things. And it's such a psychological thing in justifying sometimes our childhood, sometimes justifying things that we went through. But essentially, we build up this identity around who we think we are, and you can only change that identity through your truths. Like you have to start literally experiencing new things to make it so that the truth that you had before of who you were literally is into question. Like you have to start making yourself question everything, anything that you do not like about yourself. You have to start making yourself question it. You have to start gaining information, yes, in the things that you want to do, of course, but that will push you in that direction. But you also have to gain information that possibly aren't about things that you may particularly want to hear about. You get what I'm saying? I think so many people want to hear videos of, oh, you need to eat healthy. Oh, you need to eat whole foods. Oh, you need to. Well, maybe you also need to watch a documentary talking about the effects of what these fast food meals can give you. Maybe you need to learn about the effects of, what the economy is going to look like in the next 10 years. Like listen, there's so like, I don't even think people, I was just talking about it with one of my friends. The whole, retirement thing, baby, if you're around my age, that is going out of the window. Why? These old people are living longer than they were supposed to. Like when we built up retirement and all these other years, old people were only supposed to live for like 5 to 10 years after they retire. And then if you think about it, it's like, okay, we're going to pay you for 5 to 10 years. And then boom, these old people are starting to live 15, 20, 25, 35 years after they retire. The problem is our social security system that pays out retirement was not set up for them to live this long. So now more of our tax money is starting to go to them. Eventually, that money is going to deplete in the next coming generations. With that being said, there's not going to be enough money left for our generation. Like, it's just, and I'm not trying to be a fear monger. I'm not trying to have you put a whole bunch of fear inside of you of a whole bunch of information, because I'm also not with that. Like, there's certain information that probably isn't good. There's certain things that probably, I don't know, it's just not it is probably something that's important to the world, but I'm gonna be honest, I had to figure out what's important to me is not always important to the world. So there are some information that I don't consume because I feel like, yes, it's out there. Yes, it's something I possibly should know about, but it just has no use in my life right now. I'll be honest. And some people may say, "Oh, well, you should know about want to know about everything going on in the world." No, I should want to know everything about going on in my world. It's too much information out there, way too much. But I think you need to just start like, I don't know, anything you want to do in your life. You want to change your finances. You want to change your body. You want to change. I feel like it comes with your truth. You have to change your truth around that thing because right now you have a truth around it, whether you realize it or not. There's a truth that you have around weight. There's a truth that you have, or not even just well, weight too, but like how what you're eating and how much you're eating. Like you just have to literally sometimes make yourself so disgusted with that thing. It's kind of like a guy. Like you ever been with a guy and you thought he was just like everything in the world, and then maybe after the situation ended, or maybe he did a couple things, and now you look at him and you're just like, why would I ever even it you your truth has been changed because at that time the truth was he was amazing, he was handsome, he was all these other things, but then after time went on, it's not even that he's ugly either. Like there's some guys that I still find to be physically attractive, but I never will deal with them again because my truth around them changed. You get what I'm saying? So it's like essentially my the identity that I have of how I look at them change. But essentially nothing about them changed. Like nothing about them. Literally, there a lot of times they talk the same way, they act the same way, they look the same way. But what's different for me is that my truth changed. So I don't know, but I wanted to create this video, this episode. I'm so used to having a YouTube channel only, so I say video so many times. Even though some people are watching the video version, some people are listening to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. But I just realized like it's like so many things in life. Like I talk about, like the whole point of this podcast. Well, the whole name of this podcast is A Simple Complex because I just want to talk about how certain things are so simple. Like to change your identity is to change your truth. Like everybody talks about change your identities, change your habits, and do this thing and become a different person. But the foundation of it is literally changing your truth. And then it makes it easier to like want to do these things too. I feel like sometimes you have to realize you can hear all the information in the world about, you can watch all the videos on how to get the best glutes and how to change your body, but like if that isn't your truth yet, you're not going to be receptive of that information. No matter how many videos you save, no matter how much you get them saying protein powder you buy, you're not gonna take it simply because that thing is not your truth yet. And I feel like the foundation of changing your identity is essentially changing your truth, changing your mindset around that thing. Once you change mentally, the physical will just follow. But thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching it if you're watching it on YouTube. And please, if you're listening to it on any, podcast app, could you please rate it 5 stars? I would appreciate that so much. And if you are watching it on YouTube, I really would appreciate if you would uh like the video, you would comment, and if you like this video, if you like this episode, please share with anyone. If you like the podcast, please share with anyone. And also comment below if you are listening on YouTube is did this make sense in a sense of like a duh? I think for me, it made a duh moment in my head, like a wow, that makes so much sense. Or was it too, it still don't make sense to y'all? Like, I want to know that too, because I know I call the podcast a simple complex and I'm supposed to be breaking things down. But sometimes I have to ask myself, did I just break it down for me? Like, does it just make sense in my head because of my truth, my identity? Or does it really make sense for everyone else? But thank y'all so much, and I hope that y'all have a great one.